Hello, and welcome to the Leadership Edge. I am your host, Ted Gorski. The Leadership Edge is a show that focuses on leadership issues and topics that are affecting you leaders on a daily basis. The show focuses on these topics and these issues and likes to provide practical tips and techniques that can help you become better leaders. In today's show, we're going to be finalizing our final communication series in talking about communication styles, and we're going to be finishing it off today with what's called the compliance style. This is a style that you might be communicating with in the office. This style is the one that follows rules and procedures, is all about data and facts and figures. But we're going to dive into that very shortly when we talk about the various styles. But I'd like to start with one of my favorite quotes from the late Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, "We see the world not as it is, but as we are." What we're talking about here is, just like all the styles we've been talking about, each style sees the world through their own different lens. They filter things through that particular lens, and whenever they're dealing with issues, they're kind of focusing it from that lens. And as leaders, it's important for us to understand all the various lenses that people see the world from. Because as leaders, you might have people on your team that have a certain style that may be different than yours, or you may have to be dealing with peers who have different styles than yours. And it's important for you to kind of understand what you need to do, but more importantly, be patient and understandable to realize that someone may be seeing the world from a different lens. And part of it is having you understand what lens are they seeing the world from. So, this brings me to one of my favorite slides, which talks about the communication process. It's kind of how people see and how communication occurs. So, we start this off with the speaker. The speaker is the person, maybe yourself, who's bringing a message to somebody, and that message is in the cloud. And the listener is the person who's receiving the message, and that's the person on the bottom of this slide. Now, as the speaker, you are what's doing a process called encoding. And the best analogy I can give you about encoding is, think about it as wrapping a gift. What you're doing is wrapping a gift, you're placing your message in the box, and then wrapping it the way that you like to wrap that present. The person who's receiving it, the listener, decodes. In essence, what they're doing is taking your message, taking your present that you've wrapped, and they're unwrapping it. And they're unwrapping it according to their style. So when you look at the flow of communication, if you and the person you're speaking with happen to be similar styles, what you'll probably notice is the flow is pretty much seamless. Your message, and most likely the deliverable, is what you're expecting. You receive it and you go, "Thank you very much." But I challenge you to say, what happens if they're different? Well, most likely what would happen is, if you ask for something in particular, you'd get it the next day, look at it, and probably say to yourself, "What the hell is this?" And that's kind of how things kind of get in disarray when we talk about communicating with different styles. But to kind of look at this slide at a deeper level, there are 3 ways that you encode a message. So one of the ways that you encode your message, so again, wrapping it up, is through what's called body language, which is your posture, how you're sitting and how you're standing. It's your use of hands. Do you use them while you're talking? And it's your facial expressions. Do you have facial expressions in your communication? The second element is tone. It's your tone of voice. Is it loud? Is it soft? Is it fast? Is it slow? That's the second element of how you wrap your present. And lastly, the physical words you use. And as you can see, those 3 elements are in the top right-hand part of that slide. So those are the 3 ways that you encode your message. But if you look on the bottom right, there are 3 elements that the listener takes to decode. Well, guess what? They use the same 3. They use body language, they use tone, and they use words. So you can see what happens here is that if you're different styles, they're interpreting the body language different, they're interpreting your tone different, and of course you're probably using a different types of words, which then cause that style to really miscommunicate or misunderstand what you're asking because they're seeing it through their paradigm. So it's important as a leader to understand who are we delivering the message to. Now the final part I want to mention about those three elements is that body language makes up 55% of how you present your message. Tone of voice is 38, and finally words is 7. So you can see that from how you deliver your message, 93% is through your body language and through the tone of voice. So this is what happens when there's different styles, because when they interpret those two elements, most of the time they misinterpret your intention. And as a result, there might be some inner conflict, or the person who's listening to you pretty much shuts down and doesn't get the real germane issue of what you're asking. This is why communication breaks down. But as leaders today, it's important for us to understand who are we communicating with, and if it's a style that's different than ours, then it's our job to understand what we need to do to frame it precisely so your message gets through. So today's show, we're going to focus on what's called the C, or the compliance style. And the focus of this particular style is rules and procedures. This style is all about following process. This style has a process when they make decisions, how they solve a problem, and this style is married to that process. So realize that this style is really focused on understanding rules, procedures, and process. There is a two-dimension breakdown for this particular style that's important to understand. The first thing is that the style sees themselves as less powerful than the environment. This style doesn't think they have the power to change things. Basically, they're working within the confines of the environment, of a team, and their focus is, I'm just a person on this team, just tell me what to do. So again, they don't see themselves as having the power to change things. And this style, the second element, is they see the environment as unfavorable. Meaning when they see things, they can see the good and the bad. They can see what's working and what's not working. So this style really focuses on that whenever they're dealing with issues and, quite frankly, filtering their environment. So today we're going to be focusing on the bottom left. This style is extremely task-focused. And again, this style is more slower paced, meaning they're more thinkers. They need to think things through. So very task-focused with the thinking component. So this style is kind of coming at it from a very slow perspective. Realize that this style is going about 25 miles an hour. So they are processing things at a pace that's going to allow them to really focus on things. So let's talk about some of the general characteristics of this style and a general overview. Again, this style is all about analytics. This style is about data and information. So realize that this style, if you're dealing with it, is really looking at, give me information, give me the process, give me the end result, what we're trying to achieve, and I will try to find the information that's going to help us solve the problem. This style has extremely high standards, and sometimes they have high standards that even God can't reach, and I kid you not. So realize that this style is all about standards, and they're very precise. This is about accuracy, very important. Value to the team, jumping over to the second column. This style is about standards. This style is about the anchor of reality. This is a style that kind of tells people, here's the real deal. Here's why we can't do this, or here's why this will be a challenge. So again, they're the ones that are going to give us information on why something can or can't be done. But they are the comprehensive problem solvers. We want these people in the bunker to help solve our problems. So just realize that they are great because they're going to turn over every rock and get every piece of information. The ideal environment, critical thinking. These people are big critical thinkers, and they like to work in a technical kind of arena. And most likely in their environment, you'll see manuals, because to them, having technical manuals about a topic or an issue is really a sign of status. It's a status symbol. So just realize that. The other thing about this style is they're all about process. So realize they're going to follow a process very, very closely. Under stress, going to the third column, this style can get extremely pessimistic. Realize that when there's a very stressful situation, this style can get pessimistic and at some points negative. And as we've talked about with other styles may not respond well to that. So realize picky, getting overly critical is all about negativity, which can cause some challenges. Some limitations. This style gets defensive when criticized. Realize that this style sees themselves as experts. And when we attack them, meaning we give them constructive feedback, it can come across as saying to them, you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know to have the knowledge to know what you're doing. So realize that. So if you have to give this style constructive feedback, the key thing as a leader to realize is you focus on the process. Focus on why something didn't get done, but focus on the process, because the process and the data doesn't lie. But if you turn to them and say, let me give you constructive feedback, you will lose this style forever. And let me repeat that. You will lose this style forever, because what you've just done is impugn on their expertise. So be very careful not to use that term. The emotion of this style is fear. This is why they follow their process so religiously, because the way they see things is that they feel that if they follow their process so closely and something goes wrong, it's the process that has to be fixed. And more importantly, fear drives in them because they're fear of making a mistake. This is why sometimes it takes longer for them to process through an issue, process through a decision, because it's that fear of making a mistake. So what are some examples to kind of give you an idea who fits in this category? Well, Spock from Star Trek was your typical C. He'd always give data to Captain Kirk or to other people on the starship. It was all about the process, and he would just throw out tons of information. So he's a quintessential great example. Sherlock Holmes. Anytime you would read anything or see it in a movie, he'd break things down. He would kind of tell you why something would happen. He would gather facts. So Sherlock Holmes is a great example. Lastly, Joe Friday. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Is your quintessential C. Just give me the information and let me try to solve the crime. So again, very process-oriented examples to give you an idea of this style. So some further descriptors of this. Again, analytical. Very, very analytical. They've analyzed things tremendously. These are your fact finders. They will go and find the facts. They will find out what's happening, why it's not working. They're out there to get that. This style is precise and is about process. Do not try to cut corners with this style, because they're going to follow the process and they'll call you out on it if you're trying to cut a corner. So just realize that this style is going to really focus on that. And the key thing here as a leader is to respect their process. Respect how they go about making decisions. Respect on how they grab critical information. It's real important for this style because it's part of their DNA. And again, critical thinkers. This style are very much so into thinking critically about issues, solving problems, and making sure it doesn't happen again. So realize that this is your typical C kind of style. But let's talk about them in meetings. How do they process and how they deal with things? Well, the key thing about this particular style is they need an agenda prior. This style, when they get an agenda for a meeting, and let's say it's a bullet-sized kind of agenda. What this style does is starts writing notes. They will write detailed notes on the agenda to kind of share with themselves or maybe put some information down on what they want to share in the meeting. So realize that they're looking at it at the agenda as preparing for a final exam. So they're going to write notes down. So that's why they need an agenda. They don't like walk into a meeting not knowing what they need to prepare for. So they want to be prepared. So realize if you have this person on your team or you're going to invite them to a meeting, send them an agenda because it's important for them to be able to be prepared, because that's kind of the motto of this style is be prepared. The other thing is with this style in meetings, they'll speak up, but they'll speak up with information. So they're going to be the ones that are going to share information, they're going to share process, they're going to share rules, right? They're the ones that are going to make sure that people stay on that straight and narrow. So realize that this style is going to do that. They are going to be the reality checkers. They're the ones that are going to kind of hone people in, explain why something can't be done, maybe discuss the technology, but realize that they're doing it in an intent to educate. They are not trying to slow the bus down, but for them, they need to sometimes feel I have to educate others in terms of the process and in terms of how things operate. So realize that that's kind of how they see things. And they're going to ask the why questions. Why do we need to do this? Things have been working great. Why are we making changes? They're going to be the why people, because to them, if something's working, why change it? So again, this style is not about making change for change's sake. There has to be a reason for it. Now, some of their blind spots. One of the things that this style can get too focused in is spending too much time in analyzing consequences. This style will kind of what if things to death. So what they're doing is they will analyze and analyze till the cows come home, because that's part of their style. It's almost like what if loops that they kind of keep on drilling and drilling and drilling. So you can imagine what happens when there's a bunch of seeds in a room. They're going to drill down and try to drill down to get to a perfect solution. Well, here's the reality. To find a perfect solution may or may not work. Great example is many years ago, I had a C working on my development team. And basically, our product was out and one of our customers was testing it out to see how it would work in their particular environment. It was a $10 million deal. And they reported a small problem. They asked us to take a look at it. So I called my developer in and I told him, can you research it? So he goes off and researches, comes back to my office. It was probably later that afternoon. And he says, Ted, I found the solution and it will take 6 man-months. Now, we're working on a $10 million deal that would not wait for 6 man-months. And I said to him, okay, it's great that you found the solution, but we got 10 million reasons why we can't do your perfect fix. I asked him to kind of do a workaround to fix the problem and that we would come back to it and fix it the right way. So this style has tunnel vision. So this style gets focused on the issue, but sometimes don't see the ramifications of kind of their decision. Just like my developer. I had to remind him there were 10 million reasons why we couldn't do the perfect solution. And realize too that the details, if they get too focused on it, fogs the big picture. This style, because they get so focused on the issue, sometimes can't step back to see the forest through the trees. So part of it is try to help them kind of see that. So the value, what do they bring to the team? What this particular style does? Well, again, the process work. This style is extremely conscientious. We know that if we give a task to this style, they will follow the issue or deal with the issue and get all the information. So this style is great because they're very hard workers and they're going to be very diligent. This style's not a very people-oriented style. They're not going to go and socialize with people. When we give them a task, they're going to go do it. So this is great about this particular style. They're the ones that clarify things because they may find issues and want to get clarity, but they are the comprehensive problem solvers. We want these people on the line when we're dealing with issues because they're going to uncover every rock. They're going to turn every rock over. And that's what we want on the team. And that's what we want when we're dealing with issues. But as a leader, let's say you have to deal with peers in the organization. And you're saying, okay, how do I recognize this style? First of all, the key thing to realize is if someone is so focused on structure and so focused on process, or they have a certain structure and they're just so married to it, it's a good indication that they're probably this particular style. This style is a little bit more slower paced. So they're not going to be rushing from meeting to meeting. They're going to go at a nice leisurely pace. Whenever they're addressing issues, they're going to do it at a much leisurely pace. So just realize that this style is not going to be running around like a banshee. This style is going to be nice and calm and composed. A third way you might recognize this style is they answer a question with a question. So for example, if I was talking to a C style and said, well, what's the weather going to be? They may say today or tomorrow, or this morning or this afternoon. So they're not necessarily going to answer your question right away. They may answer it with another question. It's another dead giveaway. And another way to look at it is look at their office. Do they have manuals and charts? Do they have technical manuals? Again, that is kind of a status symbol to this style. So this is a kind of a way to kind of recognize this particular style. So how do you influence this style? What do you need to do? Well, the first thing is if you're working with this style, you want to discuss their process. Try to understand their process. Anytime I'm coaching a C and I'm working with them, I want to understand how they look at their process, but more importantly, what it is. I may use words as let's analyze the process. Let's think about things. Key words for this particular style. So the key thing is understand and discuss their process. The second thing you want to do is control your body language. You don't want to come at them in a very wild way. You don't want to be waving your arms. This style is extremely controlled. So when you're talking to them, I need your body language to be controlled, which includes your tone of voice. Your tone of voice has to be somewhat soft, not loud and passionate. There's one style that's extremely passionate about things. They're not angry, but they get extremely passionate, which raises their voice. Well, guess what? The Sikh looks at that. They see that as aggression. So realize, monitor your voice, get it nice and soft, control your body language. Third point, be organized. Be organized in your approach. Be organized in how you're presenting things. Don't jump around, okay, which ties into our last point, which is to be logical. Be logical in how you're bringing things up. Kind of go from step A to B to C. Do not jump around. This style needs things kind of in a structured, orderly pace, or kind of structured, organized approach. And lastly, use a slower pace. Don't race through your conversation. Kind of have a nice, slower pace for them to be able to consume the information. And realize, too, if you have to give this style constructive feedback, avoid the phrase, let me give you constructive feedback, or let me give you some constructive criticism. That will shut this style down. This style's an expert, and we have to treat them as such. So your action plan for the week is to, if you have this style, try some of the techniques that we discussed. Remember, this style's not a people-oriented person, so you don't have to say, hello, how are you? You can go right into task. But if you're working with them, try to understand the process. Monitor your tone of voice. Monitor your body language. Kind of watch it. Make sure that it's nice, calm, and composed. And use words like analyze. Let's research. You'll find that if you try some of these techniques, you'll connect with this style in a very, very good way. So, in closing, if there's anything we can do to help you with your leadership needs, please reach out to us at www.getyouredge.com, and we'll be more than happy to kind of discuss what we might be able to do to help. So again, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's show. My name again is Ted Gorski. Thanks for tuning in to the Leadership Edge, and see you next time.